Welcome back to the show. This is Sam Sorbo. I needed to just take a quick break so that I can segment these out for YouTube. Thank you for bearing with me. Hopefully, I'll make this a more seamless transition in the future. So, I'm talking about the rebuttal to Andrew Gutman's letter. The letter was directed at the school primarily and at all of the families who now are supporting the school with $54,000 a year tuition for K through 12. So yes, I actually didn't look it up, but I imagine a kindergartner is roughly $54,000 a year, as is everybody, but perhaps it's maybe a little bit less for the younger grades, although I'm not sure why it would be. So the rebuttal to Andrew Gutman's letter, which was a scathing rebuke on the basically the rampant racism that has taken over in the schools, and it is predominantly an anti-white racism. So the rebuttal was written by a senior at Brearley. And then this person goes through, I believe this person considers themselves to be of color. First of all, started by saying a snail mail letter. So that's a pejorative. I thought that was interesting. She called him angry. I'm assuming that that she's female because it's a female school. But then again, I don't know how they can determine that it would be a female school, because it seems like these people would believe that sex was not binary and gender was, well, let's just say confused. And so I don't know how they can run an all-girls school. The letter announced that he would be withdrawing his daughter from school in response to their anti-racist reforms. Oh yes, here she says, as an Asian American senior at Brearley, I have spent the past few days thinking about how the letter misrepresents my school. So she's coming to the sort of the defense of her school, which is lovely. And she ought to be commended. Good for her that she decided to sit down and write a letter in defense of her school and their stance on anti-racism. And that's commendable. Let's go through the letter and then I'll tell you what my big problem with the letter is. She says that he's accusing Brearley of advancing an anti-intellectual agenda that includes the gutting of history, civics, and classical literature curriculums, of censorship of books because they contain dated language potentially offensive to the thin-skinned and hypersensitive. So those are quotes from the letter. She says he further complained that his daughter had faced this as early as 4th grade. And so she finds fault with him because her daughter's only in 6th grade. And so therefore she's only encountered roughly half the curriculum at Brearley, which would be, and actually she even has more of a stake there because of course the curriculum for kindergartner for 1st grade is not nearly as rigorous or as in-depth as the older student curriculum. So this is actually a very valid point. However, she makes the assumption, and she says it here, if she is Gutman's main lens into Brearley, does this make Gutman qualified to give an educated critique of Brearley's classical literature curriculum? And so that, of course, raises the question, since she is a graduating senior and has only experienced Brearley for these brief 12 years. And in fact, his argument is that the curriculum has changed in grades, in the earlier grades, which she has actually not experienced at all as a matriculating senior, then she really has even less footing to criticize his critique than he does by her own sort of standard, right? So I find it so fascinating that she's getting as much support as she's getting for this letter. While it was a very well-written letter and very well crafted, logically speaking, not terribly appropriate, I guess is the best way to put it. It's certainly not a scathing rebuke, not a rebuke that can actually land a punch, because she doesn't speak from authority at all. And I just want to point out, she doesn't go and quote authority. She doesn't talk to any of the parents. She doesn't talk to anybody else. There's no other authority. She relies entirely on her senior high school years authority as a senior high school student. And this is what we're teaching our children, is that they are the authority. in their own lives, not their parents, and basically not even the school. She doesn't even go and talk to the school and interview the school and say, why did you make the changes that he's claiming you made? Let's get to the meat of this. Let's give him some, let's rebuke his claims with the facts. No, it's all based on her personal experience. And that's what's so sad about this. She did actually quote one mother who wrote back, what is most startling in your arguments and yet completely pedestrian, so insults, right, is the superiority you assign to whites, the unquestioned assumption that all whites at Brearley, and everywhere in the world for that matter, by definition signify a raising of standards, or that every white person is where they are based solely on their own merit. This assumption is a pathology of which many an enlightened Black person is all too aware. So this is a very veiled accusation of simple racism aimed at Gutman, because that is the left's response to anything that challenges their narrative. If you read the letter, he's not saying, why are they allowing people of color in the school? White people rule, white people rock, or any of those things. In the letter, he's saying, why are they changing the curriculum and trading it out for critical race theory inspired curriculum? That's what he's saying. But because if you challenge that narrative, you will be called a racist. Okay, so they have fancier words for racism. Oh, darling, you just hate Black people. That's what we're going to say about you. We won't lower ourselves to calling you a racist. I mean, that's what this is. Well, he assumes all white people are better. No, that's not what he assumes at all. They completely misrepresent. This is another tactic of the left. They completely misrepresent the argument. And in fact, I will point out, because I'm so happy, because people are buying my book and loving my book, Words for Warriors, and I'm getting a ton of emails. In fact, I have a number here that I want to go through if I get to them. But they love the idea that they are being empowered to understand the language and to be able to, in a sense, fight back. And that's what we're doing, right? And so the author of the letter goes on, the high school senior, and God bless her, she's making a stand. But we ought to be teaching our children that just because they're learning things in school doesn't make them all knowing and all knowledgeable. And that seems to be her assumption. She writes, sure, not everything has to be about race, but race is undeniably a crucial factor. Well, okay. Intellectual bravery is not walking to school afraid of being attacked on the way. So this is, in this part, she sort of fights back and says, we're not afraid of your letter. We're just afraid of what's in your letter. It's like, it is not seeing people who look like you murdered in the news. There's nothing intellectual about fearing for your life. It is a privilege, one of a wealthy white person, to intellectualize the trauma of people of color. It is a privilege to see racism as a debatable issue. It is a privilege to deny its existence altogether. Yowzer. Personally, I'm more afraid of an underground group of Brearley families who deny I have a rightful place in the school. So her argument with him is that by writing this letter, he's clearly denying that she has any place in the school. That is not at all what the letter dealt with. And that's the problem that I have with these people who don't know how to argue. She is a graduate of one of the elite schools in the nation, and she has no idea how to argue except to sling mud. He objects to the charge of systemic racism. And instead of proving to him that systemic racism exists, which she doesn't do because it doesn't, she says this statement is ignorant at best, facetious at worst. Surely, oh, big words. Oh, good for her. She uses big words. Surely Gutman has read the news lately. People of color are being shot and killed accidentally on the regular. What does that mean? How many black men died in 2018, I think that's the most recent place that the most recent statistics that we have, conclusive statistics. How many of those men died at the hands of police? Less than 10 all year. So where is it? And by the way, that's a lot, but how many police officers died in the line of duty? Like 80 that year. So let's talk about the facts instead of mudslinging and casting aspersions. And she ends the letter. I'm so tired of hearing that my existence takes up too much space. I'm tired of hearing debates about whether my voice belongs in the classroom. Where are you hearing those debates? And where are you hearing that? She's hearing it in her head because of this agenda that's been implemented in our schools to teach children that people hate them, to teach them that people hate them because of the color of their skin, to teach them that people of color hate them because of the color of their skin. And so to that end, I wanted to share with you this video. This is, okay. This is actually an exchange. This is on Barry Weiss's Twitter. It's an exchange that these folks had. And let me see if I can just play it.
Let me ask you something, George, because I think there's something very different about having a single experience where you make sense of it, right? And having a teacher, an authority figure, talk to you endlessly every year telling you that because you have whiteness, you are associated with evils, all these different evils. These are moral evils. It's not the same as taking like a physical thing because it doesn't affect your moral value. That's the problem.
The fact is that I'm agreeing with you that there has been a demonization that we need to get our hands around in the way in which people are doing this understanding.
Okay, so you agree that we're demonizing kids?
We're demonizing we're demonizing white people for being born.
And are some of our students white people?
What?
Are some of our students white people?
Yes.
Okay, so we're demonizing white kids. Why don't you just say it?
We are using language that makes them feel less than for nothing that they are personally responsible for.
So that was George Davidson speaking to Paul Rossi. And then they pushed back from Grace Church. They pushed back and said, you're misquoting. And so they put the video, the audio up and said, we're not misquoting. You actually agreed that was in fact what you were doing, was demonizing white children by telling them that they are inherently racist. This is the opposite of Judeo-Christianity, which preaches forgiveness. Now, I won't argue with you. We have some flawed people practicing Christianity who are not good at forgiveness. But I'll tell you, the other alternative is much, much worse. And by the way, if you're not practicing forgiveness, then that's a horrible burden on you, because we all should be practicing forgiveness. Hi, I'm Sam Sorbo, and this is the Sam Sorbo Show. In case you didn't know, I've gone to a new format, and so I post small portions of my weekly radio show on video at YouTube every other day. So thanks for joining me here. If you want to hear more of the show, just tune back in 2 days, or go back in the archives and take a look at what else I've done in the past. Thanks so much for joining me. Please share the word. Let's keep truth free.